entering the Mayo experience.
That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to another edition of the Dog or Pass podcast. This for UFC 234. Whittaker versus Gastelum from the Rod Laver Arena in Australia. Down under. Cody Saftic, not in studio today. Weather's poor. Very, very bad here. Ice storms, yada, yada, yada. Cody lives out in the sticks. He's a good old country boy type of thing. So we're bringing him in via, video conferencing here. It's not as good as having him in person, but at least we have like a screen this time. It's not the phoner board.
Yeah, exactly. And despite this ice storm, thankfully, the internet still works because, this has been disastrous. As far as this Canadian winter, especially in southern Ontario, this is like a record number of snow days, even though that is not a real thing once you get out of high school. But, I don't know. Just the roads are beaten to hell. I know we were supposed to do this in studio today. I shot you a message says I'm kind of unable to get out of the house. And so I'm wearing my comfy clothes and breaking down, which should be an exciting card. I say exciting, not very good on paper. This is a horrendous pay-per-view offering. However, keep in mind, historically, when the UFC goes to Australia, it's always an entertaining night. Maybe you don't want to shell out the money for this card, but I got a feeling at the very least, they're going to be entertaining fights.
Yeah, you look top to bottom on this card, and it's, it's pretty, it does look pretty entertaining. Like, they're not big names, but they're guys that like to go to war. There's, my boy Don Young Kim, not that Don Young Kim, has changed his name, so we'll discuss that as we go along, and how much the guy's just super tough and durable. And Shane Young has looked kind of fun. Austin Arnett, like, he gets a lot of hate, but like he at least comes to fight. Like all of these guys that you can't really trust are just, the types of guys that'll show up with their lunch pail in hand and they'll go to work. So that should be at least entertaining. Yeah, of course it's not the pay-per-view of the year, but this is what always kind of seems to happen this time of year, UFC. You have all of the stars fighting in like November, December, and that January or the New Year's card. And then there's always a little bit of a lull here where they have cards, but they don't have all the superstars healthy, ready, active, and good to go. So the top two fights on this card are awesome.
Yeah, that's my problem with it, is that they've really made it top-heavy in that you're getting two awesome fights at the top, and then the rest of it is, I don't want to say terrible, I just mean Nadia Kassim in no world should be on a main card, let alone a pay-per-view main card. And you talk about just them having stars and having to kind of spread themselves. We look back at that ESPN card, and you guys, Donald Cerrone is curtain jerking on the prelims. He's on the prelims against a top, 15 prospect in Anthony Hernandez, or Alex Hernandez. It's like, why not save these kind of fights and put them on pay-per-views? Why not let that fill out what is otherwise going to be, a weak pay-per-view and just, kind of bolster it up a little bit? Instead, you get none of that. You get, it just seems like they don't really care. Now, I get it. If it's a live house show in Australia, it'll sell good because you got Robert Whittaker in a title fight at the top of it. I just mean as a pay-per-view, you're now expecting to actually have people sit at home and order this. And just on a weekend where people are coming off of the Super Bowl last weekend, are they going to get their buddies together and have another party and watch a pay-per-view and have that same type of enthusiasm? I don't know. I am very intrigued by this main event, just because there's so many different angles it can go. And Kelvin Gastelum, I didn't really expect him to ever get here. Now that he is here, you got to talk about his chances on the big stage. So, I'm entertained. I'm intrigued. I'm interested. But as far as going out there and shelling out that money for this, as soon as Nadia Kassim appeared on the main card, that was my enough of a reason to boycott.
Fair enough. Hey, you're not going to get an argument from me. And we'll get to that fight, obviously, as well when we get there. Before we get to all of that, you're talking about shelling out bucks. We're shelling out $20 DK to Royce Gretzky, who won last week's YouTube challenge by leaving his DK handle and yada, 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 all of that good stuff. This week, we're throwing a little bit of a curveball. So if anybody doesn't know and doesn't follow me and Pat and some of the other people around the PME, we ended up winning FSWA Top Podcasts of the Year. I'm relatively new to this whole space. It's been a year and a half of being in the fantasy realm completely. Me and you work together at Fight Network, but a lot of it was live events and that type of stuff. So it's kind of cool that within a year and a half of this, we're getting recognized out there. So what Pat wanted us to do, What upper management, we'll call them that. What upper management wants us to do this week for our giveaway is wherever you download your podcast, go on there, give the PME a 5-star review, and say something nice about the podcast. Say, hey, I like Cody's toque. Cody has a really nice toque on in the UFC 234. Boom. You leave your DK handle, nice comment, and you're in the draw for 20 DK dollars. So there won't be a YouTube one this week. So yeah, iTunes is preferable, I believe. Hey, listen, don't shoot the messenger here. This is just this is how the bucks are getting handed out this week, and I'm just following suit here. I'm just following suit.
I like it. No, that's exactly it. Normally, obviously, just leave your DK handle, a positive like of the show. You can still leave your DK handle and a positive like of the show. But if you want the DK bucks, leave the 5-star rating. Honestly, Pat, I know you obviously work with him now. Paul, you see him day in and day out. I used to live with the guy. I know the kind of work that goes into this. It's not an overnight thing. You know, you don't just wake up one day and pump out all this content. And I know he's been through a lot. So yeah, at the very least, if you like the platform, if you like the fact that he's enabling guys like us to have our show on said platform, super simple, you know, wherever you listen to it, if it's iTunes, if it's wherever, just leave it a 5-star rating. I know he would appreciate it. Even if it's hard to track that stuff, just be a good person, do it. And hey, get the 20 bucks. And with the 20 bucks, let's start making some free rolls here, Paul, and let's start making some money. So I got a good feeling there's a lot of good contests for this UFC 234. So let's take advantage.
Let's get into it then. We got Robert Bobby Knuckles. I don't know if he's taking on that moniker yet, but he should. I think he's still going by the Reaper. Robert the Reaper Whittaker, 8,900 on DraftKings, minus 245 favor. Kelvin Gastelum is 7,300 and plus 205. How do you see this one shaking out?
Yeah, like I said, I'm kind of back and forth with Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker has definitely proven himself as an entertaining champion, as a worthy champion. But on the grand scheme of, you know, everybody's going for these dual belts and everybody's going for these big money fights and everybody's going for this legacy stuff, Robert Whittaker at least just seems like he's kind of on the bottom of the heap as far as popular champions in the UFC. You know, he's not going out there making these interviews. He's not really in the news all that often. He takes time off between fights. After that first Yoel Romero fight, Robert Whittaker, you know, appeared to injure his leg. Takes a little over a year off before the second Yoel Romero fight. Life-changing beating in that fight. A lot of people are speculating, you know, how damaged would he be returning? But, you know, now an 8-month layoff. That's the thing with Whittaker. You know, again, not staying in the public spotlight all the time, but you just got to look at what this guy proves on paper and what this guy proves on, you know, an actual fight night. And he's got the goods. If takedown defense was any slight bit of an issue, he's really proven over the last couple of years. He spent a lot of time in his wrestling, you know, as far as being able to qualify for the Commonwealth team in Australia. I think that checks out. Now you got his striking. Well, his striking is bread and butter. As far as him taking on Kelvin Gastelum, the only one thing that worries me is that, well, Kevin Gastelum's a bit of a bulldog, you know, short, stocky guy, puts some pressure on you, keeps coming forward. What we saw with Whittaker when he struggled a little bit with Yoel Romero is that he can win those early exchanges. But when you get into a firefight and you get into a long, prolonged fight with Yoel Romero, could he take that punishment late? Could he take that wear late? Kelvin will try to do the same thing. The problem is there's no comparison between Kelvin Gastelum and Yoel Romero. They're different sizes. They're different athletic abilities. They're different style wrestlers. They're different style strikers. Just the speed and the tempo of how Yoel Romero strikes is just much different than what Kelvin Gastelum does. Kelvin Gastelum's a 1-2 kind of striker, move forward, 1-2, try to hit you with the loopy hook. Yoel Romero, you don't know where the hook's coming from, but you know he's got full power behind it. Like, it's just so much. And you look at the last Yoel Romero fight as well. I mean, the guy misses weight. He knows he's got a spotty gas tank. So he knowingly misses weight to get Robert Whittaker into a gunfight with him, and he should have a little more cardio than he usually does. And guess what? That's exactly what happens. Firefight ensues. Yoel Romero looks a lot better than everybody thinks he's going to look in those later rounds. Certainly an argument that Yoel Romero did win that fight, but ultimately did not win that fight. Whittaker's got the win, and I think he matches up good with Kelvin Gastelum. I don't love the odds. I don't love the price. This probably should go 5. I think Kelvin's tough enough that he should be able to take the strikes. And with Robert Whittaker, you know, he's not going to overwhelm you. He's got power, but he's not going to go out there and land 100 significant strikes. I don't think. They're both kind of decent enough wrestlers that it should negate itself. You might have a low-scoring fight despite being 5 rounds. So because this is a card that doesn't have a whole lot of name value, I could see both of these guys being played to a certain extent. My official pick will be Robert Whittaker, but I'm not super excited as far as the pricing goes on it.
I'm picking Whittaker here too. I just think, but Kelvin is one of those guys. Like, this guy won the middleweight Ultimate Fighter when nobody was expecting him. Everybody loved Uriah Hall. And the guy is kind of, the one thing, like, he should be 170 pounds. You look at his body type, everything like that. He should be 170, but he's never been able to make it. But, like, you can't really count this guy out. Like, he gave Tyron Woodley the hardest fight that Tyron Woodley's had in multiple years. Now, I realize that he missed weight by, like, 6 pounds in that spot, and that was, like, his last hurrah, basically, at welterweight. But the guy's super, super durable. Like, I don't know. Whittaker has power. Maybe he can crack him. But I think Kelvin will be around to see the final dance. I do agree with you that it could be kind of a low output striking affair. I don't see Robert Whittaker using wrestling against the shorter, stockier guy with a wrestling background himself. And if it's just 2 guys striking over the course of 5 rounds, I don't know if it's a main event that you really have to have. If I am going to load up on anybody, it's going to be Whittaker. I just think he wins, the hometown crowd, everything like that. You have to factor in, we're down under, a little bit of shrimp on the Barbie. There could be some home cooking around here. Like, we have seen that the UFC go to Australia and some really questionable judging go down. So,
okay, well, so on that note, the last time that Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker fought, it's the same thing. You know, Robert Whittaker probably loses 3 of those rounds, but they look at it as, geez, Robert Whittaker controlled 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes of the round, and then damn nearly got killed. But he won 4.5 minutes of the round. Let's score for him. That doesn't happen other places. But again, yeah, you've got the crowd favorite, you've got the champion. You know, you got that old school saying to beat the champ, to be the champ. And a lot of people don't agree with it. Some people do. And in this case, it's like, yeah, you're probably going to have to sever him from consciousness or really definitively put it on him to steal that strap in his own backyard. And maybe I just don't see Kelvin Gastelum doing that. I almost look at Kelvin Gastelum as, you know, a worthy challenger, a great fighter, somebody who's obviously taken everything seriously. The move up to 185 was obviously going to be against him. He is a welterweight, as you mentioned, but he's taking his strength and conditioning seriously. He's fought some of the top guys at 185 and proven himself a very worthy adversary. You know, he deserves to be here. But in many ways, he reminds me of Anthony Smith's position. He's not really the number 2 guy in the world. In fact, there's an argument there that he's maybe not the 3 or 4 guy in the world. But it's a weak division, and we need somebody to put in there right away, taking on a bona fide champion. And that's the situation that Kelvin Gastelum finds himself in. I think that he was a beneficiary of his situation. And what I say by that is, you look at his run starting back with the Tim Kennedy fight. Tim Kennedy's got 1 foot out the door. Gastelum loses the first 2 rounds. He knocks out Kennedy in the 3rd. Kennedy retires afterwards. You got an elder fighter here who had been around the block a couple of times who was ready for retirement. Then he gets Vitor Belfort. Well, I mean, I think that pretty much describes Vitor as well. Not that he had 1 foot out the door, because he didn't willingly want to go out the door, but he was getting pushed out. You got an older veteran fighter here, Kelvin Gastelum, too much, too young, too hungry. He overcomes him. Chris Weidman, you know, there's the argument that Weidman's a little chinny, getting a little bit older, but that one doesn't apply here. He chin checks Weidman. But Weidman lives to tell the tale, ultimately gets Kelvin Gastelum down, submits him. But then Bisping and Jacare Souza, you see, you're falling right back into that mold of he's taking on fighters that are going to be perceived at the back 9 of their careers. They're getting older. Some of them are regarded as chinny in the case of Michael Bisping or a Vitor Belfort or potentially Chris Weidman. The Jacare fight, very, very, very close. Could have gone either way. Some people thought he won. I kind of thought Jacare should have gotten the split on that occasion. But again, close fights. Robert Whittaker, meanwhile, he knocked out Jacare. If he fought Michael Bisping, he would have dusted him in the 1st round. You know what I mean? So for the longest time, we had this dilemma almost at 185 pounds, where, you know, you have the champion, a guy like Robert Whittaker, and who were the top contenders? The top contenders were Jacare, Yoel Romero, Michael Bisping, maybe a Gegard Mousasi. They all cannibalized each other. You know, they all fought each other. Jacare fights Yoel Romero. He loses. He's back to the pecking order. He tries to get one back in. Weidman loses a couple. Mousasi re-signs. That whole division kind of just fell apart. And who's hanging on the wings? Kelvin Gastelum. So he's the next logical guy to get the fight. But is he the next best guy? I'm going to have to say no. Talented fighter, again, no disrespect. You know, perennial underdog. Maybe someone you could find yourself rooting behind. But I think the odds are accurate on this one. He should be the underdog. And I do have him dropping a decision to Robert Whittaker.
I think the first 3 rounds, final thought, I think the first 3 rounds are going to be close in this, and then Whittaker will take over late. We've seen Kelvin Gastelum kind of struggle. This was at 170 when he was struggling to make weight, and I think he may have made weight for the Neil Magny fight, but Whittaker just is almost like Max Holloway in that way. He kind of just keeps getting better as the fight goes on. I know that Yoel had some some big moments. But that's Yoel. Yoel's just doing nothing. Fast twitch muscle explodes on you, and then all of a sudden, you know, like the guy finishes everyone in the third round for a reason. It's third round Romero is an actual thing. So I think Whittaker takes over late. I'm undecided about how much I'm going to be exposed to this one on DraftKings. Minus 245. I think I'm more or less with you. I think the line is right. Whittaker, my pick. Let's move on. We've got ADESANYA taking on Anderson the Spider Silva. ADESANYA, the biggest favorite on the card, is minus 650. He's 9,600 on DraftKings. Anderson Silva is 6,600 and plus 475. You have a guy who fought like, what, 4 or 5 times last year, was breakout star of the UFC for 2018 in Israel Adesanya, taking on, you know, the old guard, the old champion, the best middleweight of all time. Like, I think that's obviously still fair to say at this point. The guy held on to the belt for so long. He's been gone for 2 years. He's been gone for 2 years. He's old. They're flying him across the world. They're not flying Izzy into Brazil for this type of fight. They're flying Anderson over there for a showcase fight for Israel Adesanya. We see a star power in this guy, and we see an opportunity to line him up. It's no coincidence that he's on the same card as the middleweight champion. They're thinking post-fight press conference. They're thinking his ability to call out the winner after he gets through Anderson Silva. Tall task. This is the best striker, obviously, that he's ever faced in his career. And he hasn't faced a champion-level fighter like this yet. He was brilliant against Derek Brunson, but the holes in Brunson's game really lent to what Israel Adesanya does well, which is stay on the outside, pick you apart, and wait for you to charge forward. Well, that's kind of exactly what Anderson Silva does for the most part. Sometimes he'll move forward a bit, but he likes to kind of wait. So it could be a bit of a stall situation here. I think there's a lot of respect between Adesanya and Anderson Silva. 9,600 on DraftKings. It's like this really, really crippled. Unless you like lots of dogs down the card, it's really, really hard building with him because you can't really get any of these other top guys in there, and you're taking some real chances on some lower end guys. Because of his style, because of the way that he fights, maybe he gets a first round knockout, but even if it's a first round knockout and he doesn't get all the knockdowns and yada, 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 I don't think you have to play Adesanya this week. If this goes 3 rounds and there's a lot of stalemates standing at distance waiting for the other guy to move, this could be a letdown from a DraftKings perspective. I'm obviously picking Adesanya to win here. You've historically kind of been a bit of a Adesanya hater, though.
No, what are you
I think you picked Brunson against him last time.
That is a bold-faced lie.
Okay, but you were saying that this guy, you've been talking, we could dig up the tape on this. We could totally dig up the tape on it. You have been saying for a while that this guy's going to take a fall. He's 15-0. We're waiting on that fall. Is it going to be against Anderson Silva?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever picked against Israel Adesanya, so I don't know where you're getting that information from. I think we all expect him to take the fall at some point.
I'm gonna dig up the tape. I'm gonna dig up the tape. I'm gonna post it to YouTube. I'm gonna post it to YouTube, and you're gonna hear all about it.
I'd like to, just because his UFC fights are Rob Wilkinson, which I had him. Marvin Vettori, I don't see myself going against him there. You want to split. Him versus Brad Tavares, I'm pretty sure I had him there. And him versus Brunson, which I was all over him in that Brunson's got very lackluster striking defense. I mean, it was written on the wall. People were talking that Brunson was a good wrestler and would take him down, but I specifically outlined the fact that Brunson doesn't shoot takedowns in his fight and therefore would probably get clipped in the first round and knocked out. So as much as you might think I'm a hater of him, I don't think it's that. I think it's that when you have a great performance, you got to look at, well, what were the vulnerabilities in said performance? And yeah, maybe Israel Adesanya, the worry is that you can get him down. I think looking back at that Vettori fight, that's probably the one time that people are a little bit worried for him. I think this is a tailor-made fight from top to bottom in that, it's striker versus striker, and you got the young guard, or you got the new guard versus the old dog in Anderson Silva. The way things have been playing out recently, there's one of two ways of looking at this. The greatest heavyweight of all time, Fedor, gets folded up in less than a minute. The greatest light heavyweight of all time, Chuck Liddell, recently folded up in a round. BJ Penn, the greatest lightweight of all time, gets caught with a leg lock a couple minutes into the first round. Eventually, you get to this legendary status where you might be considered one of the greatest of all time, but that's because of the body of work you've put in, and this is a young man's game. You get to a point where you're non-competitive. I don't know that that's going to be the situation here, because in the same breath, Little Nog, Shogun, Jose Aldo, sometimes these Brazilian veterans that are known for their GOAT status, yeah, they don't go quietly. The thing here is it's all pricing. I think everybody and their mother thinks Israel Adesanya is going to win this fight. But 650, I mean, that's reflective of that. Obviously, a line that opened up a lot better and then ballooned up. And then the $9,600. You got to be full board on this guy's side to believe that he's got a shot for the $9,600, that he's probably going to knock him out in the first round. The one thing that, well, a couple things that lead against that is that they're both counter punchers, right? With Anderson and Silva, we've seen many times in this guy's career where it's almost, borderline stinker because his opponent's not playing into his game. He wants you to pull a Forrest Griffin and run directly at him so he can matrix your ass. But when you don't do that, when you pull a Talis or you pull a Damian Maia, sometimes it's a little bit more boring. You mentioned that this is the best striker Israel Adesanya's ever fought. I disagree with that. I think that, his kickboxing tenure has probably...
I meant in MMA.
Yeah, certainly in MMA. Yeah, I think Anderson Silva's a notch above the Melvin Gillards and Brad Tavares of the world. But I just mean this is a guy that's very comfortable in there if it's just going to be a straight kickboxing match. And with Anderson Silva, he doesn't really shoot takedowns. So what would lead you to believe that it's not going to be a straight kickboxing match? No. So you've got two guys that are counterpunchers, might lead to a little bit of tentativeness. And if that's the case, you don't want to bet $9,600. Second thing here is that Israel has a lot of respect for Anderson Silva. And sometimes when that happens, you're not eager to go out there and hurt your, I'm not going to say friend or mentor, but you don't want to hurt this guy that you've watched for so long. He might hurt him, he might sting him, but will the killer instinct play a factor? Will he all of a sudden say, I want to really hurt this guy? Will he drop him multiple times? I don't know. And for that price tag, you want multiple knockdowns. You want an absolute thrashing that ends either in the first round, late in the first round with multiple points scored till that point, or just a 3-round thrashing where you finish them late in the third. I don't know that I see either of those cases playing out. Now, the 650 is banana peel pricing because this is an MMA fight. Anything could happen. Maybe this guy's going to break his leg a la Anderson Silva on a check kick. You just don't know. 650 is a big price. But I mean, it's there for a reason. The UFC knows what they're doing. They know that Style Bender is popular amongst fans. He's got an interesting style. You want to build this guy up, but not take the risk that maybe he's going to lose. You don't give him the Kelvin Gastelums of the world. You give him the Anderson Silvas of the world with a promised title shot if he gets past, a tailor-made matchup for him. So big price tag for an obvious reason. I would stay away from the 9,600 on DraftKings just because it's a little too thick for me. And as far as the 650 goes, I mean, does anybody ever love paying 650? You're gonna have to parlay this guy, and then you're betting that much against Anderson Silva, who has pulled out some magical moments in his career. I do think that's a little bit behind him. I think Israel Adesanya picks this guy apart. But again, when Cormier fought Anderson,
he kicked him to the body. Yeah, he got that kick to the body. Cormier, heavyweight champion of the world now. He was hurt. Yeah, man. He hit that liver, and we see it in the sport all the time. You get a solid kick to the liver, and your body just shuts down, and then the ref is forced while you're writhing in pain to come in and save you. And your body just shuts down. So it is banana peel pricing for sure.
That was Anderson Silva taking a fight on a week's notice, replacing John Jones, moving up to 205, taking on one of the greatest to ever do the damn thing, hurting him with that body kick. And above all else, Anderson was never close to being finished.
Yep.
And I think that's partly because Daniel Cormier respected the fuck out of him, respected him for stepping up, respected him for everything he's done in his career, didn't really want to put it on him, didn't put it on him. And the result was, a pretty boring decision, to be quite honest. But Anderson had better odds in that fight than he does here. They're really thinking he's at the tail end.
Yeah.
And that's when the pricing gets dangerous. But otherwise, yeah, I think we're all on Style Bender, Israel Adesanya to get the job done.
Clearly. All right, let's move on down the card. We'll go a little bit faster through these two, as we had prefaced before. The card kind of falls off a cliff after this. So we got Ricky Simon taking on YAHYA. Ricky Simon is 8,200 on DraftKings, -130 favorite. YAHYA is 8,000 and +110. What's your take?
Well, you might have confused me as an Israel Adesanya hater as really a Ronnie YAHYA hater. I can't get this guy to save my life, and I have watched him forever. Maybe it's a disrespect thing. I've picked guys like Henry Briones and Luke Sanders, and Russell Doan might have a shot here. They don't. This guy's a grappling whiz. If you are a mid-level talent, he has the path to victory. he's so savvy in there. He doesn't really take a whole lot of damage striking. His own striking's terrible, but he's got enough of a fluent kick game that he just, chops up the point, creates a scramble. The scramble usually leads to an opportunity for him to get on top of you. And if he does, he puts you away. As you look at his 3-fight winning streak, all 3 wins by submission, 2 in the first round, 1 in the third, where he kind of takes Russell Doe into deeper waters and puts him away. The guy, we always joke around, 2003 ADCC champion. Okay. His best days are behind him. He's had really bad performances at times. His cardio looks extremely spotty. What do you see in this guy that would lead you to ever want to put a play on him? His fucking submission game. That's why, it's next level. He's almost like a Damian Maia in that, like, he's got self-preservation. He doesn't take a whole lot of damage. And if you fall into his game, he will beat you. They're the best guys in the division. They don't fall into his game. The mid-level guys and the low-level guys, they always do. So now we got to classify where is Ricky Simon at. Because, Ricky Simon's a tough guy. He's a good wrestler. He'll have the wrestling advantage. And that's key here. He needs to keep this fight standing. If it goes to the ground with Ronnie Yahya, it's not that he can't handle himself. It's that
he puts himself in danger.
Yeah, one little exchange on the ground is going to lead to a back take by Ronnie Yahya. Once Ronnie Yahya is on your back, he usually gets that body triangle. Once he body triangles you, you're not going nowhere. And that's kind of what happens. With Ricky Simon, he likes those grinding fights where he's in your face. His fight with Montel Jackson, even his fight with Devashvili, it really has to be in your face. He's really short, man. So he's all about close that distance, pin you up against the cage, wrestle you, keep going. His cardio, way better than Ronnie Yahya. His wrestling, better than Ronnie Yahya. He's got a path to victory here based on that. He just needs to use his counter wrestling to stuff the early takedowns, touch this guy up ever so slightly, but get this guy huffing and puffing, take him into the later rounds.
Get him flopping to his back.
Exactly. So I'm looking at odds and I think, geez, you know what? Ricky Simon certainly got a shot here, especially when you consider, this is a very close fight. You could go Yahya if you want a dog, plus 110, not really much of a dog. Ricky Simon minus 130. Do you really want to try? Like this is probably a stay away. And my heart tells me Ricky Simon will sprawl and brawl this guy.
Yeah.
But my heart always tells me go against Ronnie Yahya. And to this point, I am certainly down money betting on Ronnie Yahya fights. So it's probably a stay away. And if you're looking for DraftKings, like, why wouldn't you want Ronnie Yahya? He's a good price, and he's got that ace in the back pocket where he can submit pretty much any mid-level guy in this division.
For sure.
Simon probably falls in that category.
He gets that sub. He obviously pays off his price, or even if it's in like the third or second round, like he's getting close to paying off his price. But if you like Ricky Simon to win this fight, and it's probably sprawl and brawl, keep at distance, don't let this guy get close to you, it's not a fight that you want to play on DraftKings because that style just doesn't score. And that's something that you're going to have to kind of avoid here. I'm more or less, as a DraftKings play, I'm actually, Ronnie Yahya could be a decent GPP play, but I don't really have any interest on DK and Ricky Simon. I do think he actually wins. I'm just going to probably avoid this fight in general and hope that one of these guys doesn't just go off. But let's move on down the card. We have Montana De La Rosa taking on your girl, Nadia KASSEM. Montana De La Rosa, 8,800 on DraftKings, minus 270. KASSEM is 7,400 plus 230. What's your take?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. You and I, back to the whole hater thing. Who has been? He's never been labeled as the worst fighter in the UFC, which I know is a label you like to throw out to people that have a very special place in your heart. But
Alex Chambers?
No, the Mokhtarian brothers are about as bad as he can. I mean, the nut low of competitor in the UFC. They have both Ashcan, especially
trash can. You mean?
Yeah, his brother looks to have some type of ability on paper, and then you watch his UFC debut, which.
In fairness, he took on Sadiq Yusuf. Like everyone knew that he was, and he got robbed, bro. That ref stopped it too early. Just like this was gonna end poorly.
That ref was the most humane, kind individual. He was like, no good can come out of this. No. I'm just gonna go ahead and stop it. You might be mad, but at least you will remember this experience. If I let this keep going, you will not remember even signing your UFC contract. Rough go for the Mokhtarian brothers. It's a rough go because, they're not the highest level of competitor, and yet they run a camp in Australia, Australian top team, and they're producing guys. And, again, they're all somewhat durable. They all have a willingness. They're gritty, you know? It seems like almost back going to the days of Valley Tudo, you know, it's the difference between Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and the slums of Luta Livre. Those guys are tough. Those guys are really tough. The technique's not there. The willingness is. They'll be able to surprise some people here and there. In Nadia's case, I mean, she fought Alex Chambers, who's represents the very lowest of the low of the division, and it wasn't like it was a walk in the park. No. In fact, I said if Alex Chambers has any, you know, 2 cents about herself, if she has any cognitive ability to see this matchup, she'll just take the fight down. In some parts, she was able to take the fight down. But 39-year-old Astro girl who's not very good to begin with, just not enough to get the job done.
Who's not even on an Australian card in Australia.
Yeah,
put that in perspective.
For good reason. But with De La Rosa here, I mean, what more could you want? I mean, her husband's a black belt, Mark De La Rosa. He's pretty legit. She wrestled collegiately in college. Good wrestler, especially for the division. Again, grappling, getting better by the day. You know, she represents one of these tough, hard-nosed wrestling type girls. Now, at the highest level, you got the Tatiana Suarez, and that's very effective. This ain't that. This is more like the Carla Esparza level. But again, that's more than unique, because we've seen people like that in the past. We've seen, you know, decent wrestling chops. Ronda Marcos, there's another great example. Decent wrestling, enough to beat people who have no wrestling whatsoever. Montelena De La Rosa is a way better, I believe, wrestler. She's the rangier striker, but Nadia's going to throw heat, and Nadia's going to be gritty. So I don't want this to be an extended wrestling match. I want Montelena De La Rosa to lull her in, take her down, and submit her. I think she's able to do both those things. I think that it's a I don't want to say a not a bad play. I've been burned on mid-level women's fights in the past, so part of me says, why are you even going down this road? But also part of me says, Nadia's terrible. The UFC gave her a long layoff after that win over Chambers because they knew, like, we can't rebook this girl. She's not going to add anything else to her toolbox.
Like, who do we book her against?
This is embarrassing. So you give her, you give her a break. Maybe she gets a little bit better. She's very young. She gets a little bit better. Now she's on a pay-per-view main card. Who's this a showcase for? Is this a showcase for this girl who's gotten way better because she's in Australia? Or is Montelena De La Rosa better than we all think, and they like her, pretty girl, young, and she goes and gets – I don't understand the card placement of this fight. I don't know who they're trying to promote here, and that makes it a little bit worrisome. But as far as I can tell, Montelena De La Rosa gets this fight to the ground, submits this girl, grinds at her, and barring that the trip over to Australia doesn't completely zap her, she doesn't get tired in the third and get caught, Nadia doesn't really even have the power to put her away if it gets to that situation. So give me De La Rosa. I'm not going to put everything on it because, again, been burned in the past by these type of matchups. But from what I'm seeing, like, it's got to be De La Rosa here.
Couldn't agree more. Montelena De La Rosa at 8,800. It's probably my favorite play. Hopefully she's not very owned. I think
that's what I'm hoping. Yeah.
The path to getting that takedown, and I think once she gets her down to the ground, like, you could see the holes in Nadia KASSEM. Nadia KASSEM too. She was 4-0 coming into the UFC. She took on Alex Chambers, and like we joked about it. It seems like ages ago. It was actually at our temporary studio, I believe, when she was on this. It's like her opponents were like they were like crackheads from like the depths of Australia. Like this was
I know what you're talking about.
Her opponents were like egregiously bad. Like that 4-0 meant nothing, and then she took on somebody who's on the bottom level of the UFC, you know, whatever you want to call it, pyramid skill level. And she was really not all that impressive. It was freaking close against Astro Girl. I think Montelena De La Rosa takes her down. I think she gets that submission. 8,800, like that's why I was talking about Izzy earlier. It's just like, Izzy, you need that first round knockout. You probably need to, like, on top of that, you need like a knockdown for that knockout as well, plus a bunch of significant strikes in the first round so that he gets up towards like a 110 in that range in terms of overall points in a first round knockout. Montelena De La Rosa, like, we throw a couple strikes, we take her down, we pass guard a couple of times, we get that submission in the first round, and like we're right up there. We've saved $800, which you can spread around on a bunch of the other pieces of your lineup. Like this is I'll be owning a lot of Montelena De La Rosa because I do not believe in Trash Can, Suman, or anybody from that gym, and I didn't like what I saw from Nadia KASSEM in her UFC debut. We move on. We've got Jim the Brute CRUTE taking on everybody. We love Sam Alvey around here. Everybody's boy, I guess you can call him. Smiling Sam Alvey. Jim CRUTE, 8,300 minus 135. Sam Alvey, 7,900 and plus 115. Oh, Sam Alvey, from a DraftKings perspective, is I've been successful a bunch of times, but I've also been burned a bunch of times because it really, really depends on what his opponent plans on doing. Is his opponent going to stay at distance? Because if you do what Elias Theodorou does, which is an effective way to beating Sam Alvey, Sam will literally stand there with his back against the fence waiting for you to come in so he can unleash that straight left. Like, that's his game. Marcin Prachnio, well, he's too dumb to realize that, like, you had to stay at distance, maybe use kicks and stuff like that.
Maybe, yeah.
If you charge forward against this guy, he's incredibly hard. The guy's takedown defense is awesome. He's been, you know, over the years working with like Dan Henderson and all of those guys down there. Like, his takedown defense is on point. And yeah, like, he is waiting for you, lulling you in, baiting you to land that straight left. But when that straight left doesn't land and he loses a 3-round decision, like, you're looking at 10 points. So Jim CRUTE, in his debut against Paul Craig, wasn't very impressive, to be perfectly honest. I was looking at him saying this is going to be a guy to fade. Sam Alvey, I think, is a nice little fill-in replacement. I forget off the top of my head who Jim CRUTE was supposed to take on in this spot. But Sam Alvey, happy to travel all around the world, take fights as much as he can. Here he is.
That's his MO, yeah.
That's what he's trying to make cash at the end of his career, and I can't blame him at all. I think Alvey is a live dog, but man, if he doesn't get that knockout, like, he is a lineup sinker. Like, if he doesn't get that knockout, if it goes to decision even, like, this guy is not, like, he could score 45 points in a victory. Like, that's how inactive he can be if his opponent isn't pressing the issue.
Well,
official pick for me is Smiling Sam, because I think CRUTE likes to take his opponents down, and that's not going to really be much of an option. But CRUTE just may have volume on the feet, and we're in Australia, so I'm not going to be surprised either way. But I'll be rooting for Smiling Sam here. No play on DraftKings, and no bet either at that price. I wish he was a bit of a bigger. I wish there's a little bit more hype behind Jim CRUTE here, and I would make a play on Alvey. But at plus 115, it's just not enough.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I mean, yeah, this is another tough spot where you've got two guys that generally kind of regarded as fan favorites, and it's tough to go. It's tough to decipher which way you want to go. With Sam Alvey, I think he nailed it 100%. Is that he's super lackadaisical. He doesn't do nothing until he lands that big left hand and knocks you clean out. But he's got to land that big left hand, and I think Sam Alvey is a guy that's kind of done a lot. When you look at the fact that he's got 33 wins, it's like that's pretty unheralded. I think he's got 45 overall pro MMA fights. He fought a little bit as an amateur. He's got some pro Muay Thai under his belt. He's been around for a long time. Above all else, like, as you know, he's a family man. He's married. I think he's got 3 kids, an adopted kid. He billows a couple fighters from his gym, and you start to see that. Where Sam Alvey was struggling to make 185. You know, he's kind of a big guy, but he's not overly big. If you ever see him between fights, he'll get up to 220, no problem. 225, no problem. So now he settles in at light heavyweight. And I think that's designed on Sam Alvey likes to fight lots. He likes to take fights short notice. He likes to stay as active as possible. Very hard to do that at 185 because your whole life, you don't have a fight booked, but you know that phone could ring at any moment. What do? You know, and you got running around after kids and you got to pick them up, you got to drop them off, and you're teaching classes at the gym. It's a hectic lifestyle. So now we see him move to 205. And I don't know long-term how much that'll help out a guy like Sam Alvey because he's known for his chin, and that was as important. He's got 3 things, right? He's got that big left hand with the power. His takedown defense, as you mentioned, it's crazy underrated. You know, like, you can get him down to a knee, and then he stands right back up. He always hangs at that fence, so it's very difficult to get him down. And he's got a cast iron chin. Those 3 things have led him to many victories. But now that he's at 205, well, we just see he just got knocked out by Little Nogueira. Not saying that that's crazy. You know, Little Nog is a former Pan American bronze medalist in boxing. But again, you know, he's coming off a long layoff. A lot of people were talking he was shot. I was talking about that. And yet he clips Sam Alvey, knocks him out. Prior to that, Brunson bum rushed him, hits him, knocks him out. So the chin's still there, I think. But maybe at 205, there's, you know, some little cracks are starting to form. The takedown defense, it's there. But look at that Ramazan Amin fight. That's a prime example why his takedown defense isn't the best kind, because he allows himself to get pushed up against the cage and you can't take him down. But he's not moving his hips. He's not sprawling on you. He's not creating space and disengaging. He will allow you to push him up against the cage. That's a problem with Jim CRUTE. Jim CRUTE it's going to be very difficult to take down Sam Alvey, but it's not going to be difficult to allow Sam Alvey to back himself up to the cage, pin him up against the cage, and hold him there for periods of time. You know, again, this is in Australia. He should be the favorite Australian fighter. He's going to be getting the pop from the crowd. And Alvey's the kind of guy that Alvey doesn't go out and win rounds, bro. Alvey knocks you out in that round and wins the fight. But Alvey doesn't really bank rounds because there's not enough going on. CRUTE's younger. CRUTE is a little faster. CRUTE's got a little more work. And whereas CRUTE is definitely the ground guy, like he probably wants to get the fight to the ground. That fight with Bearju, I thought, keep the fight standing. He really much wanted on the ground, and he really much wanted that Kimura. I didn't understand it. I thought he should abandon the move. Little do I know, he ends up pulling it off. In this fight, he's going to have to rely on his striking, and I don't think he's completely a fish out of water. He's got big power, but his primary coach is Sam Greco, who's a legend, originally from Greece, but lives in Australia and is a legendary K1 kickboxer. This kid's young, man. What's he, 22 years old? He's going to be adding new tools to the game. He's going to be getting better. His chin seems to check. So, like you're saying, take an Alvey. I would pick Alvey when he's taking on chinny fighters. So I think Alvey needs to land that straight left, and there's a possibility here. CRUTE's young. He's undefeated. He's at home. We've seen this guy get hurt before and rally right back. His cardio, even though he got really gassed against Bearju, that was debut, relatively short notice. You know, it should be a completely different version of Jim CRUTE taking on that same Alvey, who's going to back himself. And yes, again, he was supposed to take on Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann's fucking big, man. Like, big, long, and rangy. So the game plan's got to be get in his face and close that distance out. It completely changes now that you're taking on Sam Alvey. But we got a kid with a full camp at 205 in his own backyard.
He doesn't look very big at 205, though.
No.
Like, he looks like a middleweight. He did not look like Bearju was way bigger than him.
Yeah, see, I thought so too. But then when I saw them at the weigh-ins, I was like, this kid's not all that small. And, you know, the fact that he's so young, he ain't going to be getting any smaller. He's only going to continue to fill out this frame. Prior, when he was competing on the Australian regional, he was just tough and rugged. They didn't have anybody that could stand up to him. Now that he's in the UFC, that's going to be a problem. I was not impressed in the Paul Craig fight. I thought this kid looked really green and has immense holes in his game that require working. If Sam Alvey took him down, he'd be in trouble because Sam Alvey's very hard to get off of you, and Sam Alvey's got a great gas tank, and this kid's going to start fatiguing. But Sam Alvey just doesn't shoot takedowns. He backs himself up straight to the fence and attempts to land that counter left. It's the same game plan every time, and it's starting to work less and less frequently. Even that Jean Vellante fight, man, that was a nip-tuck fight that had he not caught Vellante and wobbled him, he loses that fight, you know? So the power is the only thing that's ever really bailed out Sam Alvey, and it's going to be tougher now at 205. So, yeah, I don't love this fight. I really don't. But I think Jim CRUTE is that – again, I hate going against Alvey. I think it needs to be done, though. My official pick will be Jim CRUTE. Don't love it, but I can see him getting the decision here.
A little bit of dissension there, so I like Alvey, but I don't love Alvey. You like CRUTE, but you don't love CRUTE. Well, let's move on. We have Devontae Smith taking on Dong Hyung Ma. Who are you, Dong Hyung Ma? You are Dong Hyung Kim to me. The other Dong Hyung Kim. Maestro. What the hell is this? Why are you changing your name, man? Like, that was the funny gimmick, is that there were two Dong Hyung Kims in the UFC, fighting at two different weight classes. I'm not in on it. Maybe he thinks it's better from a marketing standpoint. I don't. He just ruined all of my jokes about him. So I'm upset about it. But we have Devontae Smith, 8,600 and a -245 favorite. Dong Hyung Ma is 7,600 and plus 205. Devontae Smith, 3 straight first-round knockouts. That's generally his jam. He's one.
That is most definitely his jam.
His jam is finishing you early. The guy has a freaking loss to John Gunter, though. And the thing about Dong Hyung Kim, and he's been pretty good to me over the years. Obviously, him versus Gomi, like that was. I remember. I think he was like 8,500 on DraftKings or something silly like that. I may be wrong. The guy.
Well, you
the guy's not
proclaimed you loved Little Dong.
Love Little Dong. Love Little Dong, but now it's like, yeah, you change your name. I don't know. There's something off about this. But Devontae Smith, if we can get him out of rounds 2, rounds 3, who knows what this guy's gonna look like? And we know Dun Young Kim. Like, you look at that fight, fight of the year contender Marco Polo Reyes. When those two guys went to war, it's just like, I think we learned that night that putting Dun Young Ma, as he wants to be called now, putting this guy away is a very, very, very tall task. Like, you basically need to kill this guy. So I don't really buy into the Devontae Smith hype, to be perfectly honest. He's probably the better athlete. Does he have the better gas tank? I don't think so. I've seen Dun Young Ma go, like, deep into the 3rd round and just, like, he was super tired, but the guy was still giving her. Like, there's that, like, the pace of that fight between those two guys was so high. I think Devontae Smith would drown. Like, so he's going to be trying to search for this first round finish. I'm not counting against Dun Young Ma's durability in general, though. So if I'm going to play anybody, it's Dun Young Ma here. What's your take?
Yeah, again, you know, mixed feelings on this fight because it's going one of two ways, you would think. Devontae Smith either catches this guy early and knocks him out, that's his MO, or fake stun gun takes him into the deeper waters and beats him down, which is kind of his MO. You got the tale of two fighters. Devontae Smith's last fight against Julian ROSA, leave a bet against him. You know, the pretense being that this guy is an early finisher. He's got big power. He wants to get it done early. And with Julian ROSA, you know, he's a rangy fighter, potentially a chinny rangy fighter, but a guy that's got 30 pro fights under his belt, was on a decent little winning streak, should be able to play that outside perimeter, tire this guy, take him into deeper waters, and then catch him off guard. Not able to even get out of the first minute. Devontae Smith's got power for real. The other thing about him is you can't talk to anybody about Devontae Smith and not have them bring up the fact that he lost to John Gunther. That's just like almost inexcusable. The other thing is that he lost to John Gunther like 2 years ago. Really wasn't all that long ago. No, but the one thing I do give the guy is that, you know, he's only 25 years old. And again, you're going to make, when you're a decent prospect, a good athlete, you're going to make those improvements. He's at Factory X Muay Thai in Colorado, one of the best gyms certainly in that state, let alone I think in all of North America. And they get the best out of their fighters. They might not have the highest profile guys, but they're almost like the MMA lab in the sense that they can really get the best out of their guys. Devontae Smith seems to be, you know, just kind of falling into his own. Again, he's on a 5-fight winning streak, and all 5 of those fights are by way of finish. We talk about some of that, you know, maybe his cardio is not good. He likes to finish guys quick. Just 4 fights ago, he fought Nick Garrett's 8-2 fighter, and he finished him in the 4th round. So maybe his cardio wasn't good. And losing to John Gunther might be the best thing that ever happened to this guy, because that was his lone defeat. You need a defeat. You don't want to be one of these guys that's undefeated, doesn't know anything about yourself. And he got defeated late in the fight. So maybe he addressed those cardio issues. They're no longer there. And this guy's ready to go put on that kind of heat that he does, and is able to sustain it. We don't really know, because the small pint-sized sample that we've had of him recently is him blasting guys. With Dun Young Ma, yeah, it's like, man, you don't get pint-sized samples of this guy. You get the whole fucking thing, you know? With that Polo Reyes fight, it's like 3 lifetimes of fights squeezed into less than a 15-minute time frame. His fight with Damian Brown, again, it's a back-and-forth thriller. He's able to go 3, but he's not all that skilled, man. He's just tough, you know? He's got a decent chin on him. He's got some decent durability. He just keeps coming forward. I wasn't impressed with him in his fight with Brendan O'Reilly. And to be honest, I wasn't really impressed with him in his fight with Damian Brown. I mean, he squeaked out a split decision over Damian Brown. And as much as
that was in Australia. That was in Australia.
Yeah,
I think there was some shrimp on the Barbie that even made it remotely close like that.
Well, you know, again, it's just that I thought he won the fight. Don't get me wrong. I did think he won the fight. I just mean it was a close fight. Damian Brown's a limited fighter. Damian Brown is a ground specialist. You just saw him take out Cruikshank. He's a ground specialist, and yet he just threw that shit right out the window and said, yeah, I'll play your game and do exactly what you want to do. Dun Young Kim at the time, now Ma. And you know, and he loses a split decision. With Devontae Smith, if Maestro comes in there with the same plan of like, oh, this is what I do. I want to make this an exciting fight. I want to go after him. He's going to get hit, and he's not going to like it. And whereas we do think that he does have a chin, that Polo Reyes fight, he not only does get knocked out, but he gets dropped, you know, 3 times. The Damian Brown fight, there's moments where he seems fatigued. There's moments where he seemed a little bit hurt. The Brandon O'Reilly fight, you know, he has it his way. It's a terrible fight. But it shows that he's not really the strongest guy at 55 either. you know, despite having a bit of a judo background. Devontae Smith should be bigger, faster, stronger, better striker. It just comes down to cardio. Like, do you think this guy's got cardio? I want to take Smith. The only problem is that I'm chasing all these favorites again here. Don't want that. I think you can agree, and I can agree, this should be could be a close fight. It could be a one-round fucking ass smoking for Devontae Smith, but it could also be one of these fights that gets out of that first round and ends up being close. And Dong Hyun Kim, he's got a path to victory here. He could beat him for plus 205, 2-1. If you're looking for a dog, this seems to me like the first dog that jumps out. Like, I've got a legitimate chance here to expose this guy. But that being said, I thought ROSA would be able to take him late, and he got clipped and he went down. So that's another possibility here. If you're looking to play somebody who's got high upside, it's Devontae Smith. If you're looking for a value play, even someone in a cash game play that could get you 2 or 3 rounds of just grinding up points and then get finished, you know, I think you could do worse than Maestro. But I don't want to say this is a showcase for Devontae Smith, but he's, again, 25. He's a potent finisher, 5-fight winning streak from a credible camp. Sky's the limit for this guy. Maestro fights mid-pack guys and has entertaining wars, but we've seen the best out of him. There's not really that next level of progression. So Smith's the real prospect here anyway.
One thing I will say about this fight is why, if you like Dong Hyun Kim, don't even bet it right now. Don't bet it right now. Bet it live. Because wait for that first round. See if there's something there in that first round. And then if he gets through the first round, we assume that he has the better gas tank anyway. If he gets clipped, he gets hurt, or, you know, it's a very, very dominant first round for Devontae Smith, you're probably getting plus 500, plus 550, or plus 400 even, rather than the plus 205. So I think this is I put a little star next to it as a live betting opportunity.
I'm just going to add on that really quick. I think you're 100% right. Because if the fight gets out of that first round, you're going to get a way better price on Dong Hyun Kim. And this is what you want. You want to see Smith get out of that.
And if he wins round 1, you're like, well, he's got the better gas tank and he's already got a round in the bank. And then maybe it's like a pick 'em, or he may even be a dog even from losing a round, like round 1. You never know how the live odds are going to work. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on for this fight. We move on. We have Shane Young taking on Austin Arnett. Shane Young, 9,100, minus 325 favorite. Austin Arnett, 7,100 and plus 265. What you take, Code?
You know, here's going to be another situation of a very close fight, and the odds don't really reflect that. They got Shane Young up pretty big here, and I love Shane Young. Trust me, I followed this guy for a long time, ever since, I think, mid-2015 when he beat Jules Jackal. But yeah, listen, fights with Damian Brown, fights with Rodolfo Marquez, fights with Alexander Volkanovski, and not finished at any point. This guy's tough. You saw what he did against Volkanovski. He's short notice in that fight. Coming in, it's a bad stylistical matchup for him. He takes an absolute thrashing, but he shows this guy's got some durability. Against Rolando D, he looked high. He's certainly not a contender. I don't think he'll ever catch a whiff of that top 15 in the division, but he's going to be here, and he's going to be in entertaining fights, and he's going to be super durable. He's going to be there. Austin Arnett, fuck, man, he kind of fits that same mold. They did him no favors upon him coming to the UFC. He literally took on Murderers Row, and this was big for us in his last fight. But you look at this guy's run, right? Brandon Davis, not great, but a competent fighter. Corey Sandhagen, Hakeem Dawodu, and then they're dropping him off to Humberto Bandiai level.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's going to beat Bandiai. It is what it is. Those other guys, they're a little too much for him. So now we got to classify where Shane Young's at. Now, Shane Young's going to have a full camp here. He's going to be in Australia. He's the longer guy. Maybe not the longer guy. I think he's a little sharper with his striking, to be honest. I think he's a slightly better boxer. Austin Arnett's one of these guys that's real tough, and he likes to goat you a little bit. He likes to try to throw his hands up and say, come get some. He kind of did that against Brandon Davis, but he was outstruck. Against Corey Sandhagen, well, Sandhagen just ate him apart, especially to the body. He wasn't able to do that. He had a real good account of himself against Hakeem Dawodu, but he didn't physically do enough against the better striker in Dawodu. I can see this fight going the same way against Shane Young. I could see Shane Young just doing a little bit more, whereas Austin Arnett, he takes the punches really good. He throws his hands up. He plays to the crowd a little bit. But similar to the Dawodu fight, he gave a good account of himself, but he was fighting a slightly better striker in Alberta, where Dawodu was from. Now he should be taking on a slightly better striker in Australia, where Shane Young's from. Again, Young's durability is legit. So if Austin Arnett wants to beat this guy, he's going to have to pack a lunch, show up, and beat him down for 3 rounds. I think it's a close 3 rounds. And if it's close 3 rounds in Young's backyard, who's to say he's not going to get gifted this decision? The one thing is, when I look at the odds, I'm like,
yeah, the pricing is off.
minus 325 for a gifted fucking decision? Like, I don't want that. So I'm not going to play him on DraftKings whatsoever. I'm not going to play him on the straight money line. He is my pick. But for those odds, I can't disrespect Austin Arnett like that. Austin Arnett went into Bandonai's backyard as an underdog and showed why you shouldn't overlook a guy like this for no real reason. And now he's turning around, going to Australia, taking on, you know, again, the hometown guy. And again, he's this big of an underdog. Like, it doesn't really make sense. But I'm probably going to have to pass because of the, just the value. I'm not agreeing with the pricing, both on DraftKings and the money line.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well. Let's move on. We have Kai Kara France taking on Raulian PAIVA. Kai Kara France, 9,000 and a minus 320 favorite. PAIVA is 7,200 and plus 260. What do you think?
PAIVA worries me a lot, man. I mean, we saw this kind of last week with guys like Bontarin. It's like, you might not really know who these guys are. Not that you don't know who they are, but they come from a different scene that you're used to watching. Yep. They have inflated records, which you don't really have a gauge. Even like that Maria Borella fight. It's like, we talked about, her opponent was 15-0, but like, sure, who knew if she knew how to grapple?
Yeah,
like,
you see Russian records, you see Brazilian records, and it's just like, oh, this guy's 15-0. This guy's 25. Like, until you see a few fights with them over here, you don't really know the level of competition. Even like the Australian team, we look at Nadia KASSEM, who came in at like 4-0. It's just like, well, those 4 fights mean absolutely nothing. There's only one fight that you can really put your, you can really put your stock into one fight on their record that actually is against a good opponent. And I think PAIVA did that in his last fight against Nascimento.
You know, the difference between those scenes, because you're 100% right. On the Australian scene, you can pad up real quick, but eventually, just like CRUTE, he got to 7-0. Now you're on to bigger and better things. Now he gets to 4-0. Now she's got to move to bigger and better things. In Brazil, you can do that 20 times and no one says anything. And in Russia, a lot of those guys don't exist. Their name is just simply on your record. So, yeah, you never really know when you're taking on somebody who's making that first big jump to the big show. But again, I think last week was a good indicator that a lot of people said, I don't really know much against this Brazilian guy, but man, they're young, they're hungry, they got good striking, they got good submissions, they're opportunistic, they really go for it. They're dangerous in all situations. This Raulian PAIVA, he kind of reminds me of that. I mean, again, you look at his record, 18-1. It's pretty nice looking. His biggest moment is obviously going to have to be that Dana White's Contender Series fight with Alan Nascimento. It's a close fight. It's a back and forth fight. He shows that he's a good striker. Like, fundamentally sound. He's he's aggressive. I don't want to say he has power. He doesn't really seem to have the power. I want to say he has 2 or 3 knockout victories of the 18 wins. So he seems maybe more like he's a submission guy. Wrestling's okay, but again, opportunistic. He just tries to outwill you. He tries to outrush you. All of that stuff is just not going to be enough against Kai Kara France. I think France is a guy that, again, young and always improving and getting better and better. When he was on The Ultimate Fighter, a lot of people said, I don't really know who this guy is. But by that point, he's 23 years old. He's young. Maybe you shouldn't know who this guy is yet. But he's getting better. He's getting better. Training out with Israel Adesanya and Dan Hooker and Alex Volkanovski. Like, they got a really special thing going on right now. He's been one of these guys at 125 pounds because there's no spotlight on the division. He gets overlooked, but the skills are certainly there. His fight against Elias Garcia, again, I made the play against him and Elias Garcia thinking France is young. France is going to have those big, bright spotlights. He's fought a lot of weak competition in Southeast Asia. Elias Garcia, being cousins with the Pettis brothers, coming out of Duke Rufus' academy in Milwaukee. He's probably going to be a little bit sharper in the striking exchanges. It didn't matter. France is bigger than him. France is stronger than him. France is a better wrestler than him. And quite honestly, France was able to just take anything Garcia was throwing at him and kept coming forward. And that's all going to play great against Raulian PAIVA. PAIVA's best chance is to hurt France and get him off of him. But with those 2 knockout victories and 18 wins, he's definitely not a power puncher. So now he needs to submit him. Taking him down is going to be a fucking problem. And even if you were to get him down, Kara France is just going to be looking to get right back up. Again, he's going to be having this hometown fight. He's got Izzy in the co-main event. He's got the fan support. He's got the hometown. He's got his friends and family. He's got all that stuff behind him. It should be a good performance. He seems to outmatch this kid in every one area. But again, you know, this is a card, top to bottom. As soon as I looked at everything, the pricing is just so unappealing for a lot of these fights. And Kai Kara France, a minus 320 over a tough, unheralded Brazilian prospect who you might not know a whole lot about, but has got the goods. It's not appealing. It's not what you run towards. Could he finish this guy in the first round? Yeah. So would you want France on DraftKings? Maybe, but he's a flyweight. He's a flyweight that doesn't really have all the finishing capabilities in the world. And against Elias Garcia, who was very green and had previously been finished in one single round in his UFC debut, he still went to 3 rounds. France is likely going to take this by decision, and if he does, the price does not make sense. So I got France winning. I think he should look okay, but I'm not gonna go heavy on him. I'm not gonna load everything up on him.
The one argument I can make for this maybe becoming a high-scoring fight is just pace. Like that Elias Garcia versus Kai Kara France fight was super high energy, high tempo, lots of scrambling. Like that's why he scored 103 points. If that happens here, then there's a lot of question marks around PAIVA. That's where the big issues become. But I think it's going to be a pretty high-paced fight. And that's the argument I can make for it, is that you just want to be rostering guys in these high-paced fights. And this one seems to be shaking out like that. I like Kai Kara France to get the job done here too. But frankly, I've only watched a little bit of tape on PAIVA, and yeah, the jury's still out on him for sure. We can move on. We've got Kyung Ho Kang taking on Teruto Ishihara. Kyung Ho Kang is 9,400 on DraftKings, minus 425 favorite. Teruto is 6,800 and plus 340. Man, did they, you know, all of the hype is gone from your boy toy here, Mr. Ishihara. Everyone loved this guy. You know, him and his bitches and his whole gimmick. It was funny and shit. Like, this guy has went down a hill fast, and I guess that's what happens when you lose to Artem Lobov, the GOAT. We called that directly on this show, not just because his style he's like a poor man's Conor McGregor, but this is another one where I think 9,400. Teruto's got to know his job's on the line here. I'm not sure where he's been training coming into this one. Like Kang has been a very good, serviceable fighter over the years, but like minus 425 against somebody at least who has a lot of fights in the UFC, you know, has done some training with Team Alpha Male and all of those guys, and has worked on some of the holes in his game. Like, I think it's a hell of a lot closer than minus 425. It's a dog or pass type of spot for me, and I'm probably just gonna hope that it doesn't really score big. What's your take?
Yeah, I feel like I gotta go against Teruto Ishihara wholeheartedly. I mean, what have we seen from this guy that's any type of redeemable quality at this point? I mean, he was really entertaining, and you know, I think we discussed this before the show started. Guys like Mike Perry and Johnny Walker, right? It's like they're really impressive wins over the absolute bottom of the barrel. And they have good personalities, and people are drawn towards that. Then the UFC says, geez, we got to market this guy. And they kind of give them a little bit too much too soon. Most guys can't handle that because, you know, they're mid-level fighters with good personalities. You got to build these guys up with the Brazilian record way. Let them fight nobodies. Let them sell you some tickets and some events, and then eventually they're going to get exposed. He got exposed by Artem Lobov. Now, this began a terrible spiral for Teruto Ishihara Yashabo, because Artem Lobov proved that this guy can't check a leg kick. Just go in and kick him in the leg. He's got nothing for you. Okay, fair. Then he gets Gray Maynard. Gray is perhaps the chinniest guy in the division, and Yashabo's got a hell of a straight left. He'll just clip him at some point. Now, Gray proved you don't got to leg kick this guy. You can beat him just by leg kicking. You could also beat him just by holding him up against the cage and taking him down. He can't check a leg kick, and he cannot wrestle. Then he beats Rolando D. Terrible fight. He won the first 2 rounds. I thought he lost the third. It wasn't a great win. Then the Quinones fight, you know, again, He gets outstruck and outgrappled. Close enough fight, but he loses it clean. And then Peter Yan, that was their way of being like, it's over, buddy. You are now a stepping stone. He lasts 3 minutes and 28 seconds as said stepping stone. I think most people assume this guy was cut. I was actually quite surprised to see that he was being booked for another fight in the UFC, let alone on this Australian card against a Korean opponent. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but they've done him no favors, right? It's not as if they're thinking, okay, he can't wrestle. He's a one-dimensional, fun, exciting striker. Let's try to pair him off with another one-dimensional, fun, exciting striker. They gave him Mr. Perfect, who is extremely strong, very underrated, and is probably going to look to take this guy down and hold him down. I've honestly, not going to lie, been very impressed with KANG his entire career, and he's come up short. Don't get me wrong. But his fight with Bruce Leroy, he showed this guy's extremely strong. It's a split decision.
Come on. Let's play the game. Let's play the game that we always play here.
Guys that are cut?
His wins in the UFC. Shunichi Shimizu.
Yeah.
Michinori Tanaka. Guido Canetti just got submitted by Vera in his last fight. He probably still has another fight on his record, but like Guido Canetti is like right on that threshold of like being in the UFC versus not being in the UFC. Like this guy, anytime he's fought anybody half decent, like he's not been a shining star.
Who, Kim or Kang? Sorry,
Kang.
Yeah. No, here's my thing with Kang. This is why I like him, right? Even going back to that debut against Bruce Leroy, the guy's really strong, man. Like he can get you to the ground, and I like that style. The problem is he's super limited. He needs to be taking on a low level of opposition, and then he ends up taking that military service, his mandatory military service, right after the Tanaka fight. Now, Tanaka's a good grappler. Tanaka's a black belt. It was a good little win over Tanaka. But now you sideline yourself for 3 years. He comes back and fights Canetti, who, you know, you can't spell Canetti without can, especially in these grappling exchanges. And, you know, first round triangle, not overly impressive. The fight with Ricardo Ramos, that's what's impressive to me. He loses that fight. I thought he could have been gifted a decision in that spot. I didn't think he looked all that bad. He's strong. Ricardo Ramos is tenfold. I know he just lost. He's tenfold the fighter that Teruto Ishihara is. And Kang's kind of one-dimensional in the sense that, like, his striking's okay. Doesn't got a lot of big power, but it's good enough that land a couple shots, get a hold of this guy, peel him to the ground. That's the way to beat Ishihara. Ishihara's got that straight left, but Kang's savvy enough to not get hit by it, to not get knocked out. Kang's a guy that has never been – oh, sorry. He got knocked out by soccer kicks in, like, fucking 2008. So, yeah, sorry. 11 years ago, he got soccer kicked in Korea. Outside of that, his chin checks out and his wrestling. That's all he needs here is go against Ishihara, take this guy down, hold him up against the cage, outpower him. Yeah, Ishihara has been training a little bit at Team Alpha Male, but it's done him no good. And I don't think he's there right now. I think he's at Team Alpha Male Japan, their Japanese offshoot. And then obviously he's got to travel down to Australia. So I think Kang takes him down and then Kang holds him down. The problem is Kang's got a submission game. Well, his price tag is super reflective of the fact that he's got a submission game and that he'll probably try to submit him in the first round. And I don't love that. I don't love that at all because Kang's smart and Kang will submit you if he can, but he's got no problem just laying on top of you, holding you down, positionally just being superior to you, tiring you out, and trying to submit you late. If he's to get a third round submission over Ishihara, it's not bad. But the price tag's still super big on it.
Price
as far as the money line goes,
it's unplayable.
This is another situation where you have a 3-1, a 4-1 favorite. No, I don't like anybody for really that price on this specific card. But, you know, you're really betting on one single weapon if you bet on Ishihara. And now, I know
I wouldn't really bet on either side. I'm just saying that, like, that this pricing is stupid. Like this is not. He's not exactly a -4. Like I don't see him being -425 here.
No, but
like
again,
I don't add him to parlays. I think like that's how you lose money is by parlaying these very middling type of fighters. Like I don't know. I'm not feeling it.
Dude, I completely agree. I wouldn't parlay him. I don't feel super safe with him, even though you could look at him and say, oh, geez, he's the second biggest favorite on the card. He doesn't appear to be the second biggest favorite on the card. I'm saying on a DraftKings standpoint or, you know, just on a general standpoint, when you're betting against Anderson Silva, he's got a couple paths to victory here, you know? When you bet, you know, a guy like Ronnie YAHYA, there's pass there. Even KASSEM, she's got a pass. Sam ALVEY, he's got multiple passes. He's got the cardio. He's got the takedown. The superior wrestling. He's got the experience. He's got all that. When I look at Teruto ISHIHARA, the only one thing he's got is that straight left, and we've banked on that before. We both bet him over Gray Maynard on the simple basis of it's 15 minutes. At some point, he'll just touch him, and Gray will fold over as he's known to do. Not the case. Doesn't hit Gray because he can't wrestle. He's on the back. Here's one thing. Here's his tinfoil hat. We'll move right on. Teruto ISHIHARA's got a bad back, and I'm going to say that's probably the reason he never blossomed the way he maybe could have. He was never going to be that good. He's never going to be a world champion. He's never going to be a top 15 contender, but he's got a bad back. And in every other sport, that is almost a career killer. A bad neck and a bad back, you don't really ever come back the same. And this guy, he's just never really progressed as much as we thought. And maybe that has something to do with it. But this is his last fight, and then Ryzen would love this guy. You know, little promotions like ONE FC would love this guy. The UFC has no use for him anymore. He's just got one job left to do, and that's drop a decision to Mr. Perfect or get submitted by Mr. Perfect, which would be better in case you're playing him. But yeah, that's the take there.
Fair enough. Let's move on. Let's move through these ones really quick because we've been going pretty long here. We got Lando VANNATA taking on Marcos Rosa Mariano. Maybe listed as Marcus Mariano, maybe listed as Marcus Rosa. Frankly, this guy's just straight trash. Like, I don't understand how he even got signed. Watch some tape on him. Not impressed really by anything by anything that he brings to the table. Obviously, he's Brazilian. They're flying him across the world to take on an American. Like, it's a very, very weird spot here. Obviously, he's coming in on short notice. Lando needs a win. Guys got super, super excited. It's almost like a Joe Lozon, like a new Joe Lozon type of situation here where, like, they see that this guy's an exciting fighter, a fan-friendly fighter. Fans love watching Lando VANNATA. You know, he goes to war. All of his fights are pretty gangbusters awesome. I think they set him up properly here, and I see him getting back on track. I don't think this guy has any sort of upside in terms of like championship abilities. Anytime he's had to really one of those big steps up, and I realize he's had some mental issues and some depression and yada yada yada. I talked about that, I believe, last time heading into his fight.
Yeah, you did, about how it made you nervous, and then Lando does what Lando does, and now we got to believe he's over it. Shit.
He's out of that gym. It sounded like it was kind of toxic. I think he's on the right path again. So right here, like, they've set him up with a perfect. I can get him for $100 cheap on DraftKings. He's minus 390 as opposed to minus 425, and he's taking on a complete schlub that's getting flown in just because they needed a warm body. Like, come on.
Hey, that's not
Lando over Kung Ho Kang all day for me. When we talk about that range.
Hey, those guys are 2 weight classes apart. This is Marco Rosa that you're looking to fade, not Mr. Perfect.
What?
Marco
No,
Rosa.
I'm saying VANNATA over, like, I'm talking about DraftKings pricing tiers. They're 93, 94. I'm like, I would take Lando VANNATA against a complete newcomer who doesn't look good on tape, and I'm baffled as to how he got a UFC contract, especially when we talked about, you know, Brazilian fighters with records and so on and so forth, like, and getting like padded records. This guy's 6-4. Who is his manager? It's probably Ali.
No, listen.
How does this guy end up here?
Do with his manager. This man was a very important bargaining chip. Without Marcos Costa, Anderson Silva probably wouldn't be fighting Israel Adesanya. He's Anderson's buddy. They're both out of Killer Bees in Brazil, and clearly this is, I'll do you a favor, you do me a favor. My buddy probably going to be down for the fight anyways. He might be I don't know. He's not obviously cornering him now, but he's probably part of the team. Again, Killer Bees. They're friends. They're buddies, and Anderson is a good guy, and he's floated his buddy a bone. And the UFC was like, "Fuck, man, we got nobody for this."
All right,
guy
let
to fight."
Lando needs to crack some skulls. Let's get him in there.
Career is swirling down a shitter, which apparently in Australia it goes reverse the other way. Very intriguing. But Lando's career is just spiraling fucking out of control, man. Like, we were all so unbelievably excited for this guy upon him almost dusting Tony Ferguson and just like probably the most badass first round you've seen in a long time. And then after that, it's like he beats John McDessie with that wheel kick. The sky is the limit for this guy, and it's been bad, man. The David Taymor fight, he never gets off, and he gets outstruck by the better striker. The Bobby Green fight, he drops Bobby in the first round. He looks tremendous for the first round. And then he starts taking a lot of damage, and that's what you realize about Lando. Lando takes damage, dude. The longer these fights go, it piles up on him. Jacker Close does the same thing that David Taymor does. So finally, he's hitting the bottom of the barrel. They give him Matt the Steamroller Frevola. Yeah. This is Lando's chance. They're setting him up to get back on track. And he's unable to do that against Matt Frevola, earning yet another draw on the basis of a 10-8 third round. He's not built to go 3 hard. He's so flashy. You know, he's a squirrely guy. We talked about this last week, squirrely fighters, about, fuck, these guys, they're tough, they're durable, they show you a thing or two, but they're tough to put away. Lando's like that, but like he's got water gun power. Like he doesn't go out there and nail you with that big shot. Well, he hit Bobby clean and put Bobby down, but Bobby got right back up. And with Tony, you know, it's spinning shit, but he hits Tony hard. He puts Tony down. Those other fights, he's unable to get his opponent's respect whatsoever. Yeah. He hits them, they take it. His wrestling's good. You know, he wrestled a semester at Colorado. And, you know, it's a D1 collegiate program. He dropped out to pursue fighting, but all the same, the guy knows how to wrestle. But he doesn't commit to the wrestling. And when he does, it's not for prolonged periods of time. I feel bad saying this because it's like, who am I sitting on a couch wearing a sweater and a toque to call out a professional athlete? But, like, Lando VANNATA has no fucking ring IQ, like, whatsoever. He is his own worst enemy. He costs himself the fight.
So you like Marcos Rosa. You're picking him.
No,
you're shitting on Lando here, and then you're not going to back it up by taking the underdog. Where are we headed with this?
Yeah, Lando's the kind of guy you could fade in that maybe he's just going to blow it for himself. If Lando goes in with the game plan of take this guy to the ground, one has to assume he's leaps and bounds better than him on the ground. But if he goes in the game plan like he kind of always does, I'm going to have a fun, thrilling, exciting fight for the crowd. Guess what? This guy who's 6-4 from Brazil, who's innocent, buddy, he probably doesn't know how to do anything except for stand and strike. He's a Muay Thai fighter. This is what he wants. If Lando does that, don't bet Lando. But if Lando goes in and you thought to yourself, geez, Lando's going to take this guy down, Lando all day. But it's hard to trust Lando because he's a freestyle fighter. And what I mean by that is he's got no game plan. He just goes out there and lets it fly. And letting it fly is going to get you hit. And in his case, he doesn't wear damage in the later rounds particularly good. So here's a spot that I like Lando, but I'm worried for Lando. You know, he deals with the depression. He deals with the fact that he sometimes says, I don't really want to fight anymore. I'm probably going to retire. And then they just match him up against increasingly lower level competition, and he keeps rendering increasingly worse fights. So this is a spot for him to rebound 100%. But wasn't that last fight? All I'm saying is food for thought. I got Lando, but the price, again, doesn't fit it because we're all betting against no-name Rosa more than Lando. We're thinking, Lando's shot. Not shot. He's not shot, but Lando's ain't what he thought he was going to be, but he's still better than the 6-4 guy we don't know nothing about. That's a dangerous spot for a price like this. So all I'm saying.
All right, Jalen Turner, Callum Porter, 8,700 minus 265. Potter, is 7,500 plus 225 if we got.
Well, I mean, it's just another situation where it's like the odds don't really make all that sense. Like Jalen Turner, in what world is Jalen Turner a 2.5 to 1 favorite over somebody despite lasting all of 3 minutes with Luque? Now, trust me, that is one hell of a debut. I mean, you're fighting Vicente Luque on the undercard of Khabib versus McGregor. Like, talk about a big spot against a guy that is just far better than you. What can you really do? You know, he looked good against Max Mustaki for as long as that one lasted on the Contender Series, but there's not a whole lot that you can go with. He seems like a pretty potent finisher. He seems like he's got the goods to go out there and put it on somebody. But at the same time, you know, he's developing. He's young. You got to put him up against the right opponent. He's taking on a 34-year-old Callum Potter. I don't expect Callum Potter to be any type of world beater anytime soon. He had a lengthy enough 8-fight winning streak snapped by Marcin Held by a heel hook. So what can you take from that? Then he loses a split in his last fight against BJ Bland. He looked very bland in that fight. I didn't think he was all that impressive. Do you remember Luke Jumeau? Luke Jumeau is a super average Australian fighter who was known for his strength and conditioning. He was a prison guard, actually, and decent striker. But he went out there and he just fought his heart out. And there's a couple times where he probably should have lost, but he's in Australia and the crowd's fired up and he gets the decision. Yep. I think Jalen Turner wins this fight. The issue is the probability of Callum Potter getting into a close enough fight and being gifted some type of decision is a very real thing. It's no disrespect to Jalen Turner. I think he's going to be faster. He's longer. He's rangier. He trains at what I believe to be a slightly better camp. 6'3". That's big for 170 pounds, man. But 23 years old, he's young, he's inexperienced, he's going into foreign territory, and he is way too big of a favorite. Sorry, I said welterweight. This fight's at 55. So imagine how big the guy's going to be. The center of gravity's not going to be great. Maybe he gets taken down. Maybe he gets tired. Maybe, he's 0-1 in the UFC, so the bright lights and the travel could affect him a second time around. These are all question marks. Those are all question marks. I don't want to bet a guy who's 7-4 as a nearly 3-1 favorite. Too rich for me, old Paul Shaughnessy. So I'm gonna have to say avoid Jalen Turner. But again, gun to my pick, I've got these favorites. As you can see, I'm picking a lot of favorites, and I'm not super certain on all of them. I'm picking these favorites, but these prices are whack, man. Yeah,
we're gonna see a lot of this moving forward, though, because it just seems like with the new ESPN deal, they've got like cards, like 2-3 cards from now. Like, and these are like the regular fight nights. Like, they've already released odds on a bunch of books and stuff. So, like, we're going to be seeing, this is a new trend that we're going to be seeing. These lines are getting out way, way earlier. So, if you want to get those early prices, you need to be like weeks in advance. They'll just slip them out. Like, on Saturday night, they'll probably release odds for a fight in a month from now. And that's just kind of what we're going to be seeing a lot of juiced lines, and, you know, people are going to be hammering one side of it. So, it's the new nature of the beast. I think something that we'll have to adapt to moving forward. Finally, I got nothing on this one. We have Jonathan Martinez taking on Woodley Buren. Martinez, this is cranberry sauce written all over it. Like, I don't know of a single soul on this mortal coil that really care, besides maybe Jonathan Martinez or Woodley Buren's like mothers. Like, I don't know who could possibly care about this fight. Low level on both sides. Martinez, you got, outstruck kind of. He didn't look horrible against Andre Soccermom, but wasn't exactly a life-changing performance. And Woodley Buren, not exactly the top level Chinese import here either. Coming off of a. What was his last fight here? I believe he lost to Chito. Yeah, Chito, round 2 body punch. And he's lost to Rolando D. Like, what? I guess they needed to give these guys, I guess Woodley Buren, it's a pink slip fight 100% for him. Like, this will be 3 straight losses. He was supposed to get Bharat Kandari mixed in there, but that bout got canceled. That's unfortunate for him, because then maybe that was his opportunity, right? Like, that was his opportunity to get a win. I have no idea. I guess dog or pat. I got nothing here, though. I'm not feeling this one. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Jonathan Martinez here. I think with Woodley Buren, probably the fact that you signed him to a 3-fight contract, so you owe him at least one more. And the fact that, China really isn't all that far from Australia, especially that part. So it's not going to be whenever they go to Australia, you'll see a lot of Chinese fighters. Whenever they go to China, you'll see the odd Australian fighter. So it makes sense in the case that, hey, we got this guy. We're not going to China anytime soon, so we need to use him up. Australia is the closest place for him to go to. Why not put him on there? Well, who do we have for him to fight? Well, listen, he's 0-2. He's going to need to take on somebody that's around the same level as he is, 0-2, or winless in his UFC tenure, and that's exactly what he's getting here in Jonathan Martinez. Jonathan Martinez could be sneaky good. I got a feeling he could be all right, and I say that on the basis of he hasn't really fought a whole lot, but I go back to his Legacy 49 fight with Matt Schnell. He technically loses the fight with a DQ due to an illegal knee, but he fucks Matt Schnell up, man. This guy's striking is really not all that bad. Again, he shouldn't have thrown that knee, but he didn't look all that bad. Jesse Cruz is an acquaintance of mine. Good grappler, strong guy, the Puerto Rican Gamecock. Decent grappling. He takes him out as well. It's the next run of opponents. They all fall through. Benny Vincent, another acquaintance of mine, very tough guy. Freddie Ortega, tough enough guy. David Duran, tough enough guy. David Acosta, again, seasoned guys. Finally fights a nobody. Then Joe Pearson, the Triangular Strangler, Sengoku veteran. CJ Hamilton, Dana White contender, one of the top flyweights. And then eventually fights Andre Sukumatas and loses. Sukumatas, a guy that's been around. Sukumatas, a guy that's a good striker. I didn't think Martinez looked that bad. He looked way smaller. And quite honestly, he just wasn't the same level of striker. But it's his UFC debut. It was relatively short notice in that he was supposed to fight CJ Hamilton in LFA. They signed him to come and fight Sukumatas on short notice. So he had a fight, but not this fight. Now you got bright lights. Now you close enough fight, but he definitely lost the decision. It's like, talk about an unsexy fighter. He's a bantamweight, not the sexy division. He ain't ranked. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He doesn't really have any huge highlight reel to his name. Bit of a submission guy. He's very easy to write off. So it's like, that's the logical opponent to put in there against Wuji Buren, but what's Wuji going to do to him? I didn't think Wuji looked terrible against Marlon Vera till he got socked to the body and he folded right over. But, the fight with Rolando D, I think that's a better indicator of what could happen here. It sounds like this guy's not a great wrestler. He's not a good striker. He's just got a willingness to come forward. And that willingness to come forward is good and all, and they can beat those local guys in China. But a willingness to come forward against a superior striker. In Rolando D's case, the guy's dad's a former boxing world champion. He was a good enough striker to beat Wuji Buren. Marlon Vera, he's super, he's kind of all over the place. He's long, he's rangy. Sometimes he's on, sometimes he's off. But, he's a better striker than Wuji Buren. He, too, finishes him. Now he's getting Jonathan Martinez. Well, I'm here to tell you, Jonathan Martinez is a better striker. He's faster than this guy. He's got a better submission game. Again, is part of me worried? Yeah, because you're betting over guys that would be, curtain jerkers on a Bellator card. They'd be curtain jerkers on the ONE FC card. This is not high-level MMA. But based on that, -170 is one of the price tags on this card that isn't 2-1, that isn't 3-1, and yet this man should win. So I think Jonathan Martinez gets the job done. I'll have a small play on him. This is a card that I'm going to do a lot more tape study on just to make sure, because the lines are just so heavy that it's probably a time to hunt some dogs. So you probably want to go after those dogs. And just to recap, I know we've gone through the dogs so far that I don't mind. Kalen Potter, just because, it's a crazy price. Marcos Rosa, I'm not going with him. But again, if he's going to catch, it's the price. You're chasing price more than anything. I don't like ISHIHARA. I don't like PAIVA. Austin Arnett, that's one I don't mind whatsoever. Dong Young Kim, there's one that could come through. The rest of them I'm going to stay away. But there's at least 4 dogs here that have a shot. And this isn't a card where a dog's a dog, +120, +130, +140.
No, they're like +200 and above.
2-1 dogs. So you just need to hit 1 or 2 of them. And you don't have to bank on every single fight. You don't have to parlay every single fight. You just got to know exactly which ones you feel comfortable with and go in those directions. So this could be a tricky card, but this could be a very profitable card as well.
We're going to have to be in talks here, because season 1 of the MMA Ironman is coming up. Me and you are having our team together. I'm not sure when the deadline is. I know obviously it starts for this event. I'm not sure when the DFS sniper. That's only one S, I believe, is the DFS sniper. There's a mistake out there. Somebody else has the DFS sniper with 2 S's. DFS sniper, and he was trolling. He was trolling pretty hard. He's part of something called the Soup Mafia. My first encounter with said mafia, and it is what it is. But yeah, so DFS NIPER. So it'd be like the DFS sniper instead of sniper. So I don't know. That's Sean I has this thing. I'm not sure when his deadline for when he's going to be getting people in yet is, but I think there's about 80 people in it right now. So if you get it, hit me up. Just reach out to me on Twitter. I'll send you in the right direction, so there's no confusion in between the troll and the non-troll. But me and you are going to have to talk about what we're doing here because
Big time.
it sounds like you like a lot of favorites. So like we're not making a roster that way. Like we're gonna have to.
No, listen.
I have a general idea. Let's just talk quickly. Our quick core here. All right. I think we're both on board that Montana De La Rosa is going to be in our lineup.
Yeah.
Montana De La Rosa, 8,800. We see the first round finish potential. Even if it's not a first round finish, we see multiple takedown potential. And then second round, third round type of wear down type of situation. So I love that spot. I love that spot a lot. In terms of our second stud, that's where I think me and you are going to have some arguments with each other. But that should be fun. Next week, around this time of the show, is when we'll break down what we did right, what we did wrong, how our lineup did, brag, or at least take our lumps. Who knows? Every week will be a different week, but it should be kind of a little fun thing for me and Cody to do together, as is our show here that we always do together. Thank you to Cody Saftic, breaking down the fights with me, as always. Thank you to Chad, behind the scenes here, doing all the sweet cuts and mixing in the graphics, making my job easy and making everything around you come together. For both of those guys, I am Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Mayo experience! Experience!